I'm here today with a Tesla Supercharger extension cable. This is made by a company called Hansshow. This is for vehicles that have CCS1 charging inlets to charge at Tesla Superchargers without having to take up two stalls. Now, this is a relatively new problem. We've been driving EVs now for 15, 16 years-ish, and we didn't need supercharger extension cables. That was because only Tesla vehicles had access to Tesla superchargers. And Tesla electric vehicles all have their charge port located on the rear left of the vehicle. The Tesla vehicle backs into the charging stall, and the connector, which is on a very short cable, Tesla superchargers have very short cables, it just plugs into the rear left corner of the vehicle, and it works fine. The problem now is about 2 years ago, Tesla opened up its supercharger network to other electric vehicles, EVs from all other automakers. Most other electric vehicles don't have their charge port located on the rear left side of the vehicle. And what the problem that presents is Tesla's short supercharger cables don't reach the other electric vehicles' charge ports. So the cars have to park sideways sometimes and even take up two parking stalls just to be able to plug in. Now, other people that are using the supercharger in that area are not happy with the fact that these other vehicles have to take up two stalls, park sideways or whatever. But it's not just making other people unhappy. For the owner of the electric vehicle, it becomes difficult if they're charging at a highly utilized Tesla supercharger, where sometimes you have to queue up to get your stall. You need two stalls right next to each other to be able to charge in many instances, and you just don't get that if there's other people waiting. As soon as the stall is open, somebody pulls into it. So last year, Hansshow came out with a Tesla Supercharger extension cable. I was one of the first people to test it and came to the conclusion that it was not a good product and it was not safe. Hansshow reached out to me shortly after and said, look, we hear some of the complaints that you have. We're going to fix them all. And we're going to come out with our next generation of this cable. We kind of agree with you that the things that you brought up weren't safe. The most serious of which was when you plugged in a Tesla supercharger and you were charging, this end here would be plugged into your CCS1 equipped car. You're charging now. If you pressed the button and pulled the Tesla connector off of the extension cable, it was still live when you removed it. This was just a button. It wasn't a switch that stopped charging. And that's a really serious problem, because if you pressed a button and pulled it out quickly, you could have a serious arc. I mean, that's just completely unacceptable. Hansshow fixed that. And now this button here is an actual switch. As soon as you depress this, within milliseconds, charging stops. The same with the button on this side. When you press this, charging stops. But that one always worked that way. You need it to have it on both ends for sure. They also improved the thermal sensors. Both ends of the extension cable have thermal sensors, so that if a certain temperature is reached, an internal temperature, it will reduce the charging rate, slow down charging to try to cool things off. So I agreed to review the extension cable again. They actually sent me out a prototype, and I used it, and it actually worked fine. I was very pleased with it. I charged a few electric vehicles. I made a video. And then a couple months later, they sent me their production unit, which was slightly different than the prototype they sent me. And I made that video about 2 months ago. And I had problems with it. It wasn't charging properly. Charging was shutting off when I was trying to charge my Rivian. The Rivian wouldn't even accept the charge with it on 1 or 2 occasions. So I put out that video, and Hansshow reached out to me, of course, immediately after and said, look, we think you just got a bad cable. We'll send you another one. Send us that one back, because we want to test it internally. We want to understand why it didn't work on your Lightning or your Rivian. So I did that. Sent it back. They sent me a new one. That's this guy right here. So what we're going to do now is do another stress test on this. I'm going to test my Chevy Equinox EV, also my Ford F-150 Lightning. If I can, I'm going to do my Rivian also. The reason why I want to do the stress test is this cable is only rated for a continuous flow of 350 amps. Many, if not most, electric vehicles today can pull up to 500 amps. So, you might say, well, that's a huge problem. This thing's only rated for 350 amps, and all these cars can pull a lot more power. What's going to happen? Is it going to melt? Is there going to be a fire? Is it going to damage my car? Well, it shouldn't, because of the thermal sensors that are on both ends. When the temperature gets too hot, it will send a signal, and the charging rate will slow down until it cools off. Even though it's rated for consistent 350 amps, it can accept 500 amps for a certain period of time before things get too hot. And if the thermal sensors are working properly, the charging rate will slow down. If the temperature gets really too hot, it will shut off charging. But my question with that is, if I'm using this every day on an electric vehicle that pulls 500 amps, if I'm using it, I wouldn't say every day, but whenever I charge, the continued use of hitting that thermal limit and having it reduce, is that going to wear out the internals on this? I don't have an answer to that, but it's a legitimate question to worry about. But so for here today, what I want to do is another stress test on this cable. I'm going to test at least 2 of my EVs, maybe 3, and run them, pull them at 500 amps. I'm going to pull into charging stations at a very low state of charge. And all 3 of my vehicles can pull 500 amps for almost 10 minutes each. And I'll do one after another and see if we can stress it to make it reduce, see if it shuts off, just see how it reacts. Because, it's one thing to have the cable and have it work. It's another thing to have it work properly. I mean, if you plug in and in 2 or 3 minutes, it shuts off, and then you've got to reset it or move to another station, or if it drastically derates down to like 30 kilowatts and you've got to stay there for an hour, hour and a half, is it worth it? This thing's expensive. So we're going to try to figure out here today if this one works better than the previous one I had, and if it's worth buying. So with that said, let's get into it. So first up, I have a Chevrolet Equinox EV here. It's at a very low state of charge. It's about 2% state of charge. I'm going to charge it up to 80%, monitoring the temperature of the connector and the cable the whole time. So let's get her plugged in first. Make sure this doesn't release. Nope, doesn't release. Now I need to activate this charging session through my Tesla app. Charge here. I'm at stall 2D and start charging. Okay, let's see. Let me open up the car. We're at 1% state of charge. I want to start this camera. We're charging, we're starting at 1%, and I have this recording. The goal is to charge up to 80% and then immediately swap the vehicles with my Ford F-150 Lightning and continue to charge that vehicle from a starting point of 6% up to 80%, stressing out the cable. Both of these vehicles will pull 500 amps for the first 6 to 8 minutes of charging, so it's a pretty good stress test. We're starting off with the connector at 93 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a pretty warm day, about 80 degrees. So the connector's probably going to heat up just from the sun alone, but we'll monitor it during the charging session. All right, less than 10 minutes into the charging session, charging stopped when we were at 20%. So we went from 1% to 20%. I immediately plugged it back in and it's charging, but it's only charging at 21 kilowatts now. So very slow charging. I checked the temperatures of the connector where it mates to the NACS connector and also the inlet here. It's not warm at all. It's not even 100 degrees at any of the connection points. Of course, it's warmer inside, But if it was so hot on the inside that it should be thermal derating at this point, the outside of the connector would be hotter. I've done this many times, and I mean, I've seen the exterior of the connector and the couplers get up to 150 degrees. We're nowhere near that now, so don't know what's going on. I'm going to continue to charge the Equinox and then swap out the Lightning, and we'll see what happens. All right, so I decided to move the car over one stall because it actually started even slowing down charging and went down to only 18 kilowatts. So I quickly unplugged, moved it over to this stall. We're charging again, and as soon as I plugged it in, it went up to 150 kilowatts. So I'm thinking that the Tesla NACS connector somehow was overheating and it was limiting the charging session, not the vehicle. But we'll see what happens now. We'll see if it holds this for a while. Remember, it took less than 10 minutes last time for vehicle charging to shut off. So I'm going to continue to monitor it. And again, as far as the temperature on the connectors, they're cool. They're like 95, 96 degrees now. So it's very surprising that we had some type of thermal issue, but I'll continue monitoring it. We'll keep charging up to 80%. We are at 25% now, and we're still holding 150 kilowatts. So I'll check back in a minute. Checking back in, and unfortunately another problem. 9 minutes into the charging session, we're now up to 43% state of charge. So the first time we went from 1% to 20%. This time we went from 20% to 43%. Almost the exact period of time. Charging stopped again. So I immediately turned it back on again, unplugged, plugged it back into the same charger, and just like before, the charging rate now is at 21 kilowatt. We were pulling, I think 121 kilowatt before that, which is around what the Equinox should be pulling at around 40% state of charge. It might have dropped down a little bit. I looked at around 39%, and I think it was 120 kilowatt. So it might have been a little bit lower than that, but not 22 kilowatt. So let me see if it's creeping up at all. Nope, still 22 kilowatt. So for whatever reason, the new replacement Hansshow cable that I've got doesn't want to charge the Equinox, or at least continue to charge it here at this charger. And I specifically went to a different Tesla Supercharger this time, just to rule out the fact that the other Supercharger station that I was at last time could have been the fault. I knew it wasn't because I use that station frequently, and I use it with NACS adapters on cars that have native CCS1 inlets when I'm doing road tests and so forth, and I don't have a problem charging there. So I knew it wasn't the site, but this is disappointing. I'm gonna let it charge a little bit longer, and then I'm going to plug in the Lightning and see if we can get a clean charge recording with the Lightning. All right, so it just wasn't happening with the Equinox. It was charging at 20, 21 kilowatt. So we waited a while and it just wasn't increasing. There was no use continuing to let it charge at that. Yes, it was working. It was allowing power to pass through the extension cable, but 21 kilowatt is not what you want when you're at a DC fast charger. So we unplugged, Equinox pulled out. I pulled my Lightning into the first stall that I was using at the first time with the Equinox, because that connector, if the connector was overheated, would have already cooled off by now. It's actually gotten cool. It's got overcast. Temperature seems like it's dropped 7 or 8 degrees since I started. There's no direct sunlight, so things are cool and there's a breeze. The Lightning is currently charging at 500 amps, the full amount. I plugged in at 7% state of charge. So let's see how the Lightning handles this, if there's any issues with this. Hopefully I'll get a good 7 to 80% charge session in without shutting off. Okay, update. Been charging for about 6 or 7 minutes. We were ripping along, pulling the full 500 amps. The Lightning was charging at like 170, 175 kilowatt, as it should. It should do that for about 6 to 8 minutes and then drop down to about 122 kilowatt and hold that almost all the way to 80%. That's the normal charging curve for the Lightning. It's what I get when I just use a NACS adapter and come to Tesla Superchargers. But what's happening here today is, after about, I don't even know, 5 or 6 minutes, the charging rate dropped off a cliff. It's still charging, but now we're only charging at 70 kilowatt, which is not normal for the Lightning. You know, the Equinox shut off, and then when I turned it back on, it would only charge at like 20 kilowatt. The Lightning's now charging at 70 kilowatt. It's been doing that for about 3 or 4 minutes now. So I have to believe some thermal derating is happening here, that the connection, whether it's at the NACS adapter into the Hansshow cable or the connector itself in the car, something's triggering a thermal reduction in power, because this isn't a coincidence. It shouldn't be doing this. So I'm gonna hang out for a little bit, and if it doesn't pick up the power, I'm not gonna switch the station like I did with the Equinox. There's no use in doing that. What I will do though is pull out my NACS adapter, move the Lightning over to this station here, plug it in, and see if it'll just charge normally using the NACS adapter, because right now, this is another fail for me as far as I'm concerned with the Hansshow extension cable. Vehicle's still charging, and maybe some people don't mind if it just reduces the charging rate and charges slower, but you know, 70 kilowatts when I should be pulling 122 kilowatts, that's not really a premium charging experience. So I'm gonna wait around for a little bit longer. If it doesn't pick up the power, I'm gonna move it over to this stall and use the NACS adapter, and we'll see what type of power we get and how long it holds it. All right, so I've been charging for more than 10 minutes, and the Lightning is charging exactly as it should be with just the NACS to CCS1 adapter. It started off pulling the full 500 amps. It did that for 5 or 6 minutes, and then it slowly dropped down. It's been charging at around 124, 125 kilowatt now. Let's take a look at what we're at. Yep, 68% state of charge, 123 kilowatt. Nice and steady. It's gonna ride that pretty much up to 80%. That's the Lightning's charging curve. So with just using the NACS adapter, it's working fine here. It was definitely the Hansshow extension cable that was causing the issues here today. All right, one more time for good measure. I now have my R1S up at the Tesla Supercharger that I did the testing with for the last video, the one where the Rivian and my F-150 Lightning wouldn't charge correctly, so Hansshow sent me a new cable. So for complete thoroughness, I want to test the Rivian also. Now, the interesting thing is when I pulled in, there happens to be a Rivian R1T charging here just fine with his NACS adapter. Let's see how the Hansshow works here today. I'm at a low state of charge, down to, I think, 8%. So the Rivian should be pulling full current for the first, 7 or 8 minutes, and hopefully it'll make it through that. Let's give it a shot. All right. Let's see how this works. All right. That's connected, locked in nicely. Plug in. I have to activate the charging session here. Open up my Tesla app, charge your other EV. I am at Alamucci, New Jersey. I am on stall 3B. Start charging. All right, let's see how it works out this time. Now I have the charge being recorded from inside the vehicle, so we'll check in with you either when the vehicle is completed charging to 80% or if we have any problem. Okay, well that didn't take long. We were ripping along at full current for about 5 minutes, and the vehicle went from 8% up to a little over 20% state of charge. And then all of a sudden, the charging rate plummeted down to 60 kilowatts. We're still charging, but at a much lower rate than what the Rivian should be pulling at, like 22, 23 80% state of charge. We should be way over 100 kilowatt. I mean, the Rivian may have started its descent. You know, it charges at a low state of charge up over 200 kilowatts. It only does that for a short period of time, and then it starts to ramp down. But we would be way up in the mid, 150, 170 at this point. Instead, we're charging at 60 kilowatts. So it's still charging, but really slowly. So I have my infrared thermometer. I'm going to test the temperatures at the different points. The connector is really not bad. The highest I could get at the connector is 94.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's fine. Now, when we test here, the Tesla connector itself is at 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Still not bad. But when I take the temperature of the Hansshow extension cable, right where it meets with the Tesla connector, it's a different story. It's 129 degrees Fahrenheit. So this end here of the Hansshow connector, this is hot. It's hot to the touch. So I think that's the problem. I think that is hitting its thermal limit and triggering the vehicle to lower its charging rate. So yeah, we're still charging. So I guess if you had a lot of time and you didn't care and you were eating or having a coffee or something somewhere, the vehicle continues charging. But at that low charging rate, to me, that's still a fail. What I'm going to do now is, well, first let me take a look and see if it has increased. Nope, it's holding at 60 kilowatts, and now I'm up to 20% state of charge. So I'm going to let it charge for a little while. If nothing changes, I'm going to unplug it, and I'm going to plug in my regular NACS adapter. And we're going to see how the Rivian will charge on this same stall just using the NACS adapter. Update number 2. Just as I was about to unplug and use the adapter, the charge rate started climbing again and went up to 212, I believe, kilowatt as a maximum charging rate. It only held it for a couple minutes, and now it plummeted back down to around 60 kilowatts. So rather than introduce the adapter, I know the adapter is going to work. I know that's not a problem. I've charged at this location here with the adapter many times. I'm going to just let it rip, and we'll let it charge up to 80%. I'm probably going to be here for a while because it looks like it's going to yo-yo. It's going to hit a thermal limit and then derate 4, 5, 6 minutes later, start charging higher, drop back down. So, on one hand, it appears like the thermal sensors in the Hansshow extension cable are working, which is good. You want to see it work. But on the other hand, if you can't get a consistent charging session, if it's going to take incredibly long to charge when you're on a road trip and you need to reach the Tesla connector, is it really worth it? So we'll let it continue to charge and talk about it when we get back to the State of Charge garage. Okay, well, the Rivian performed better than it did with the previous extension cable that Hansshow sent me. If you recall in that video, the Rivian just kept shutting off. It didn't want to accept current through the Hansshow extension cable, but now it did. I actually got the full charge recording all the way up to 80%, although it derated a few times, but that's kind of what it's supposed to do. If too much current's passing through it and either of the two ends gets too hot, the current will drop down, it'll derate until things cool off, and then charge at a higher rate again, as you saw in that Rivian charge recording, which is great that Rivian gives you the whole charging curve on the center display. You can see that the Rivian charged at full current for about 7 to 8 minutes. Before a thermal event happened at one of the ends of the connectors, it dropped the charging rate down to 60 kilowatt, but it kept charging. Unlike the Equinox just shut off at a certain point and said, nope, no more for me. But the Rivian kept charging, and it held that for about 12 minutes. And then whatever thermal sensor was triggered cooled off a little bit, enough to allow the vehicle to start charging at a high rate again. It did that, but this time for only 3 minutes before hitting that thermal limit again, dropping down, and then this time it stayed at around 63 kilowatts for 17 minutes. And after 17 minutes, it actually recovered and then continued on the normal charging curve for the Rivian R1S, what I would expect. But at that point, it was already at like 55% state of charge. So the vehicle wasn't calling for high amperage. So it wasn't so much so that it heated up the thermal sensors and shut them off. So the second half of that charge recording actually is the normal charging curve for the Rivian. You can take a look at what the charging curve of this event was, and you can see the dips there. And the red line here is basically what we would expect the Rivian to do under perfect charging conditions. But the Rivians have been known to be very sensitive to temperature, so I don't always get a perfect charging curve out of it like I do with my Lightning. But that would be roughly what you would expect if everything was perfect. And you could see those dips in the charging curve. That costs you a lot of time. All that red in that is kilowatt hour that could be pumped into the pack. And to get to the point where the vehicle recovered and charged normally at around 55%, that took around 40 minutes to get from the starting point to about that. That should have been about half that time. So if I really just wanted to charge to about 50% from where I was at, that's all I needed to get to where I was going. Instead of taking about 20 minutes, it took 40 minutes, so it was twice as long. But then after 55%, it had its normal charging curve. So the end result was still about 20 minutes longer. The full charging all the way up to 80% took us 58 minutes in this charging session. It should have taken somewhere around 38 to 40 minutes. So when you look at the whole session, it's not that bad, an extra 20 minutes. But if you were just needed to charge to like 50%, it's a lot worse, because instead of 20 minutes, now you're there for 40 minutes. So it worked on the Rivian, at least on this day. And that's the problem that I have with the Hansshow Extension Club right now, is that it's kind of like, well, is it going to work straight through the event? Is it going to stop charging like what happened with my Equinox? The other cable that they sent me previously stopped charging on my Rivian. So you know, you need certainty. When you're on a road trip and you're going somewhere, you need to know it's going to work. It's going to work every time. Now, as far as it derating, I think some people will find that acceptable because the cable's enabling them to maybe reach the charger that when they couldn't. If they're, let's say, trailering in a truck and they can't get the truck into the right position at a Tesla Supercharger, this 8-foot extension cable is very useful. For the average driver that just doesn't want to take up 2 stalls, I think it's a little bit less useful, but you have to decide if it's something that you want to get. This is not for everybody. Everybody doesn't need a Tesla Supercharger extension cable. And even less people do now than did maybe a year ago, because now we have a lot of other networks that are coming out and rapidly deploying DC fast charging. The Tesla Supercharger network is the most prolific, reliable, expansive network in the US. They're everywhere. And when all of the other EVs got accessibility to Tesla Superchargers, everyone was like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to use those now. But now we have networks like Iona really proliferating, Walmart, that are all installing high-speed 400 kilowatt DC fast chargers that so far have been extremely reliable and very long cables. So you don't need any type of extension cable. You only need an extension cable on the older Tesla Superchargers. They have the shorter cables. Tesla's now installing V4 Superchargers. That's their latest generation. And they have longer cables because they started installing these after Tesla opened up the Supercharger network to other manufacturers. So if you don't have an extension cable and you're using the Tesla Supercharger network, see if you can navigate to the V4 stations. You know those by the amount of power. If it's 250 kilowatt, that's a V3 station, and you can't reach, in many instances, without an extension cable, unless the site's empty, and then you can park wherever you want. But the V4 stations are going to show a higher kilowatt draw, like 325 is what a lot of them are showing now. The next generation, once they really start installing a lot of V4 cabinets and it's true V4 stations, then it's going to show up to 500 kilowatts. But many of the ones that are installed today, you can see in the app, they say up to 325 kilowatt. Those have longer cables. You won't need an extension cable with that. So as more Tesla superchargers get installed with longer cables, and these other networks come out with longer cables that have native NACS plugs, like I said, Iona, Walmart, they all have, every one of their sites have a blend of NACS connectors and CCS connectors. This becomes less relevant. So, you know, my biggest problem with it, well, I have two big problems with it. It's not safety certified. That's number one. Number two is I just can't seem to get a consistent charge out of it. Does it work? It kind of works, yeah. Is it going to have conflict with GM vehicles? I did with my Equinox, and the other one that I had a conflict with my Rivian. The Lightning seems to be able to charge on it without a problem. Well, it'll derate, but it'll continue charging. So you're just going to wait there a little bit longer. But it seems like the Lightning will charge on these cables, you know, almost under any circumstance. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. So I mean, that's your decision. If something like this is what you think you need, it's a very small subset of electric vehicle drivers that actually need this. And you'll know if you need it. If you're frequently traveling, if you're frequently trailering, and you want to use Tesla superchargers, if those are along your route, then it might be something that you want to consider. It's expensive. Hansshow sells two versions of this, the 5-foot cable and the 8-foot cable. 5-foot cable, $629. The 8-foot cable, $729. In my opinion, if you're going to get one, spend the extra $100 and get the 8-foot cable. The 5-foot cable, I don't think is long enough. It is for some vehicles, but not for all vehicles and in all situations. So it's about $100 more. If you're going to throw $629 at it, put the extra $100 in and get the 8-foot cable like I have here. And if you do want to buy one, you can save 20%. I do have a discount code with this. This discount code isn't an endorsement of the product. I know some of my followers want this, and if you want it, you might as well take it. It's 20% off, so it's a big savings, more than $100, and it's just state of charge. You put that in the coupon code and you'll save 20% on the item. I'll drop a link in the description of this video so you can click through and purchase it if you would like to. And the other thing I want to point out is, you know, you've seen, I've made 4 different videos on this. I'll put links to the other 3 videos in the description of this video if you want to watch all the way through, from me getting the prototype to then the production model to having problems and now this final one. But I've also have a lot of followers that have actually purchased this. Many of them are very happy with it. Many of them are saying, Tom, I use it, it works fine, haven't had a problem with it. But I have had others reply and tell me they've had the same type of issue with this. Like sometimes it works, sometimes charging shuts off. Sometimes it works, but really derates and charges a lot slower. So, you know, it's not just me that's having these problems. A friend of mine, Chris Bow from Bow Family EV, he has a YouTube channel. You should check it out. It's a good channel. He's had mixed reviews also. He has an F-150 Lightning. His has been working fine. And then recently, he reached out to me and said, look, you know, I've used it and it was charging fine. Then all of a sudden it had a massive derate, charged a lot slower. So I think it's systematic of the unit itself. It's not that I've just been getting ones that happen to have issues. I think, you know, this is something that pretty much everyone will experience. I also think that some of the people that are using it that say, oh yeah, it's great, I've been using it without a problem, they're not monitoring the charging as closely as I am. They might plug in and go inside to the store or Walmart, whatever parking lot the thing's in, and come out later and the car's charged. Maybe they don't see these dips going up and down like we're showing, where it's hitting its thermal limits, shutting off to cool off and then going back. And maybe some people don't care. They just want to plug in and be able to reach the connector and charge their vehicle. And if they have to wait an extra 10 or 15 minutes, that's fine, because the cable enabled them to be able to reach the connector and charge. But like I said, that's your decision. If you think that this is something that you want or need, you might as well get a coupon, a discount, save 20%. Well, that's all I have here today for the Hansshow extension cable. I think this is going to be the last one I do on this product. This is 4 video series on this product here. It's interesting, and I'm only doing it because I get responses from my followers saying, look, I'm really interested in this. Please let me know if it works. Let me know if you know what your thoughts are on it. And that's why I've done this video series. But I think this is the last one. I'll drop all the links in the description of this video. And if you do want to buy one, like I said, State of Charge will save you 20%. Listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, thanks for watching. Don't forget, please click that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And also, don't forget, check out my website, evchargingstations.com. It's got all the latest electric vehicle charging news and reviews.